Faces here again. And what we're going to be looking at today in Mr. Arnold's CLU3E class is the direct examination, which is also referred to as the examination in chief. The examination in chief. So this is a part of a trial when you get the chance to talk to a witness. Two sides to that. It's the adversarial system. Two sides against each other. So the name for that we looked at when we were doing the highlightings a couple of days ago was the adversarial system. That's two sides against each other. So in the adversarial system, the first round of questioning starts with the Crown. And the Crown always goes first. The Crown always goes first. Yesterday, we all looked at the opening statement. And you looked at some information that you had to fill in for the opening statement planner. That was your name, last name, first initial. And this, for the sake of the lawyers, this is the form that you were going to use to say your opening statement at the trial. You can take this with you and fill this out. I'm going to post this on the classroom page as a review as well for anybody that did not catch it. So if you have that, that's great, but it's not necessary for this line of questioning. So opening statement. We did that yesterday. We are looking at the Crown today, and specifically the Crown's direct examination, because most of the people in the class here are on the Crown side, except for Sam. Sam, we're not singling you out here. You and I will talk about this after. Right? You're good for now. Questioning's all the same. So the Crown's goal, and the Crown brings all their testimony and their case forward first. Because all the defense has to do is poke holes in either actus reus or mens rea for the Crown. And yesterday we all determined that it was the intent, that we would be going after the intent in this case. Because Carrie Jones didn't necessarily have any evidence that she planned this. She definitely walked out of the store with the My Pod shuffler, but there's not really evidence to plan that. So the Crown has to show that there is. So if I were the Crown and I was trying to ask some witnesses, I would be asking witnesses like, what's the name of the police officer? Anybody? No, not Andy. Nope. Constable Justin Tran. Good try, though. Good try. Yep. Also, the security officer. Does anybody remember what the security officer's name is? No, not Matilda. Fiona Lester, or just F. Lester. Lester. Last name. So, the goal in an examination in chief or a direct examination, they mean the same thing. It's the best opportunity for your witness to tell their side of the story. You want to ask questions that allow the witness to tell their story. So, for instance, tell me where you were on the night of blah, 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 and what exactly you were doing there. And so the witness begins to tell a story. You don't want to limit that. You want them to make something up that sounds very detailed and like a story because you want the jury and the judge to believe them, to believe that story. You don't want to ask them just yes or no questions. You don't want to limit them to that unless it's just a detail you need to clear up. And single word answers. You want them to tell a story. Alrighty. So the Crown's goal is to prove using witness testimony of whoever the witnesses are in this case. We've got Frank Lester and Justin Tran. That the accused, and what's the accused name, everybody? It says on your opening statement planner. The accused of the defendant's name is Carrie Jones. That's right. Carrie Jones. So she would be placed in here. If you were on the defense, Sam, you can see on yours that it says my client, correct? Instead of the accused. Look at the very top of the page there. It says my client or the defendant, right? No. You guys are going against each other. Yeah. Adversarial system. Good. Okay. Meets the requirements of both mens rea, the guilty mind or intent, and actus reus. So let's go down to page 2. Flip your page over. If you have the boxy side of the page, flip your page over, and you're going to see here that our friend, the old woman who lived in a shoe, is back. Yeah. So as the Crown, we want to prove both actus reus and mens rea that the old woman in the shoe did what? hit her children, but not only hit her children, the physical act of hitting her children, but she did what? Whipped them, yes. So she did the physical act, actus reus, but mens rea, she what? She planned to beat them. She had the intent to beat them, but we have to show that as the crown to be able to fulfill both of those things and put her away. This is the evidence that we have. So let's take a look. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread, whipped them all soundly, and sent them to bed. So, we need to ask perhaps a neighbor. So let's take into account now that we are questioning a neighbor who might know the woman that lives next door to that woman. And we want to prove, using that neighbor's testimony, that she had intent to beat her children. So the first thing we want to do, and I'd like you to write this next to who, is as the crown, you have to introduce your witness. So you are going to write this in the first box next to who. It's, could you please explain your relationship to the accused? You always want to call them the accused. You always want to make them sound guilty, like they've already done it, like they've been accused of that. So, could you please explain your relationship to the accused? So, if we are talking to the neighbor, what do you think the neighbor's going to say? Yeah, you are. This is your witness. This is the neighbor who you are trying to use to convince the jury that the old woman in the shoe had the intent to beat her children, that she planned it. What's that? No. You'd use a crown one. We'll talk about yours tomorrow. Okay. Could you please explain your relationship to the accused? So the neighbor would say, yes, my name is the new neighbor in the boot. Get it? Old woman in the shoe, new neighbor in the boot. Yeah. Pretty clever, right? The new neighbor in the boot. And I live next door to the old woman. I have known her for many years, and there you go. We've established, using some detail, that this person has lived next to the old woman in the shoe. This shows that this is probably a good witness to talk about the old woman. And they live right next to them, so there's a good chance they witnessed that as well. So, who are you? Could you please explain your relationship? So, next, we're trying to establish that the old woman beats her children soundly. So, if you are a neighbor and you are hearing sounds come from a house of children being beaten, what's a question we could ask to the neighbor that establishes that this is a neighbor that has heard these things? What's that? No, it's not their kids, right? It's the old woman's kids. So what will we ask the neighbor? Ooh, ooh, yeah. Have you ever seen? Maybe they can't see through windows. So have you ever seen or heard? Good. The children being whipped soundly. Now, this is a yes or no answer. How could I change this so it would open it up? Please explain. Okay. What else do you want them to do? If you want them to get into a descriptive way of this, how about could you please describe? times you have seen or heard the old woman's children being whipped? There you go. So this opens up the story. So you would encourage your witness to use what? What makes people feel? Their adjectives. Their adjectives. You want to make them bring feeling out in the jury. So you could say screaming, wailing, crying. Children were pleading to their mother to stop. Oh, yeah, I've heard it. I don't want to describe it because it makes me feel sad, but I've heard the children screaming. I've heard them wailing. I've heard them crying. I've heard them pleading with their mother to stop beating them. All right. Where? A significant piece of information is where the house is located. Because if the house is far away, the neighbor can't hear. So describe how close your house is to the old woman's. Or describe how close your room is to the children's room. All right. Next. Resist the urge to look at your phone. When? We have to establish a storyline using this witness. So when does this usually occur? When does this usually occur? Around night, okay. But specifically, right around what? Between what period of the day and what other period of the day? Dinner and bedtime. Look, right here, right? She's feeding them. So between dinner and bedtime, she whips them. So give a description of the time you hear whipping of the children happen. You always want to press on that part as a crown attorney that she is whipping her children. You want to drive that point home. So if we're looking at intent, we have to get the word plan in there. So you want to establish some sort of pattern. Remember that I'll post all this, so don't worry if you're falling a bit behind. This will also be on the video, so you can watch it again. The old woman feeds her children at the same time every night. I know because I can smell broth. Be very descriptive about the broth. It's beef every single night. I have no idea how children can survive on one meal over and over and over again. And then you can say, exactly the same time every night, the screaming starts. Screaming starts. Okay, so this leads directly into a next question. This leads directly into a next question. Why do you think children are screaming? Why do you think the children are screaming? I think it is because no, they are going to be soundly, and then they are every night. The neighbor can start to describe how they feel. I feel terrible and frightened for them because they know. So does this make the old woman sound like she doesn't plan it or she does plan it? Right? Because we've established a pattern. So you don't have to say plan specifically. If you establish a pattern of that behavior, it's like looking at someone's pattern of offense. So if Carrie Jones had stolen things from stores before, there's a good chance that pattern would take her into planning to steal from another store. Easier to prove intent that way. Not a very nice old woman, regardless of where she lives. Tomorrow, we are going to look at the cross examination. But today, this was direct examination or examination in chief. And for those on the defense, we'll talk about how you direct examine a defense witness. So if you were direct examining a defense witness, you would want to try to make the old woman in the shoe look like she does not plan this. We know that she does whip the children, but as the defense, you have to show that she doesn't have the intent to whip those children. Doesn't plan it. However, because I'm such a great lawyer, here we go. Okay. That's it. That's it for direct examination. We're going to watch a short video after this that shows some direct examination. I'm not going to post it on here because it's already, you don't need to see it. The direct examination videos are already on there. Okay, I'll post this on the classroom page. But for the point of this video, not yet. We are going to look at feeble-minded Rudolph.
Next, prosecution presents affidavit document number 488, which concerns the seamstress Annie Nooch. Document reads as follows. District Court, Frankfurt on Main, has decided the following. Seamstress Annie Nooch, daughter of is therefore requested to present herself within 2 weeks at one of the hospitals mentioned below. She does not take herself voluntarily. She will be taken by force. Next, document number 449, interrogatories in the German and English text concerning the farmer's helper, Meyer Eichenscher. Your Honor.
Defense objects to introduction of these repetitive documents. According to the ruling of the first tribunal, Such documents are not even admissible unless supported by independent evidence of their authenticity.
Objection sustained. Your Honor, may I ask the defense a question? Yes. Would evidence on sterilization be admissible if there were a witness?
Yes.
Thank you. Prosecution calls the witness Rudolph Peterson.
Will you raise your right hand? I swear by God the Almighty and Omniscient that I will speak the pure truth and withhold and add nothing.
Yes, I do. Will you please tell the court your full name and place of residence?
Rudolph Peterson, of Frankfurt am Main, Great Brick, Nummer 7.
When were you born, Mr. Peterson?
May 20, 1914.
And what is your occupation?
Baker's helper. I'm a baker's helper.
Are your parents living?
No.
What were the causes of their deaths? Mr. Peterson, did they die of natural causes?
Yeah, natural.
Mr. Peterson, what political party did your father belong to?
Communist. The Communist Party.
Uh-huh. Now think back. Do you remember anything unusual that happened to you and your family in 1933, before the Nazis came to power? I mean, anything of a violent nature?
Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
19.
Would you please tell the court what happened?
Some SA men broke into our house, and they broke the windows and the door, and they called us traitors, and they tried to beat up my father.
And what happened then?
Well, my brothers and I, we went to help him, and there was a fight, and finally we got them outside in the street, and we beat them up and turned them over to the police.
Did the police do anything about it? Why not?
It was then, at the time of the national elections.
Yes, you mean the time the National Socialists came to power?
Yeah.
Now, Mr. Peterson, what happened after 1933?
Okay, so you get the idea. So what he's doing is he's talking to him about the story that he has, but he's also getting him to tell more of the story. So what happened after that? Explain what happened after that. So he's building a timeline, he's building a story, and he's steering that timeline to where he wants to go. So for those who are lawyers, you're going to meet with me today to talk about how to do your direct examination. And for those who are not lawyers, today you are going to finish the work on your planners from yesterday, and you are going to start on what's called your role description. And we can all talk about your role description at the, after all this stuff is done here. Okay. Good stuff. And you can clap now. Yay! Direct examination is done.